The darkness of space lit up with weapons fire. Hundreds of ships from two great fleets fought each other near the Kasari Nebula. The battle had been going on for hours. Ships exploded. Escape pods flew in every direction. The war between the Velith and the Moron had reached its most violent moment. Admiral Tyvo stood on the bridge of his flagship. He was a Velith, a creature that looked like a giant insect with 4 arms and hard black shell covering his body. His large compound eyes watched the battle on the main screen. The Velith were winning. The crystalline ships of the Moron were breaking apart under the heavy fire from his fleet. On the other side of the battle, crystalline Prime Orith floated inside his command chamber. The Moron were beings made of living crystal. They did not have faces like other species. They communicated through vibrations in their bodies. Orith was worried. His fleet was losing ships too fast. He needed to retreat, but his pride would not let him. Then something unexpected happened. Every ship in both fleets received a message at the same time. It came on all frequencies. It was impossible to ignore. The message was simple but strange. Caution, a human warship has entered the combat zone. All parties are advised to cease hostilities or maintain safe distance. Admiral Tyvos made a clicking sound with his mandibles. It was the Velith way of laughing. Humans? Those small, soft creatures from that tiny blue planet? He had read reports about them. They had only discovered faster than light travel 50 years ago. They were children in the galaxy. Their ships were small. Their weapons were probably weak. This warning was a joke. Crystalline Prime Orith had a similar thought. The Moron had been traveling between stars for 10,000 years. Humans were nothing. They were not even worth thinking about during a battle this important. Both leaders ignored the warning completely. Far away from the main battle, a single ship moved through the chaos. It was the UN Sespike. The ship was painted dark gray and had the flag of United Earth on its hull. It was small compared to the alien warships around it. It looked like a fish swimming among whales. On the bridge of the Baekdu, Captain Park Jin-ho sat in his command chair. He was a man of average height with short black hair and calm eyes. He had been a captain for 15 years. He had seen many things in space, but he had never seen a battle this big. "Captain, I am counting over 200 ships in the combat zone," said Commander Lee Sora. She stood next to him, holding a datapad. Her voice was steady, but there was concern in her eyes. "Both fleets are fully engaged. They are not responding to our warning." Jin-ho nodded slowly. He expected this. The aliens never took humans seriously. They saw Earth as a small planet with weak people. They did not know what humans were really capable of. "What about the civilian ship?" Jin-ho asked. Lee Sora touched her datapad. The main screen changed to show a different image. It was a transport ship, old and slow. It was trapped between the two fighting fleets. Weapons fire flew past it every few seconds. One direct hit would destroy it completely. "The ship is carrying Neth refugees," Lee Sora reported. "Over 3,000 civilians. Mostly families. They have no weapons, no shields. They cannot escape on their own." Jin-ho looked at the screen for a long moment. The Neth were a peaceful species. They had no army. They had no enemies. They were simply in the wrong place at the wrong time. And now they were going to die because 2 other species could not stop fighting. "Can we reach them in time?" Jin-ho asked. Lieutenant Han Minji turned from her position at the helm. She was young, only 28 years old, but she was the best pilot Jin-ho had ever seen. "It will be dangerous, Captain. We will have to fly directly through the battle. Both fleets might fire on us." "That was not my question," Jin-ho said calmly. Minji smiled a little. "Yes, Captain. I can get us there." Jin-ho stood up from his chair. He looked around the bridge at his crew. These were good people. They had families back on Earth. They had dreams and hopes and fears like everyone else. And he was about to ask them to fly into the middle of an alien war. "Listen carefully," he said. "There are 3,000 innocent people out there. They have done nothing wrong. They are not part of this war. But they will die if we do not help them. I am not going to give you an order. I am going to ask you. Will you follow me into that battle?" The bridge was quiet for a moment. Then Lieutenant Quan Tai Wu spoke from the tactical station. He was a big man with a serious face. "Captain, my weapons are ready. Just give me a target." Chief Engineer Yoon Do-yoon's voice came through the communication system from the engine room. "Engines are at full power, Captain. The Baekdu will not let you down." One by one, every member of the crew reported their readiness. There was no fear in their voices. Only determination. Commander Lee Sora looked at Jinho and nodded. "Your crew is with you, Captain." Jinho felt proud. This was why he loved being a captain. Not because of the power, not because of the ship, but because of the people. He sat back in his chair and looked at the battle on the screen. 2 great fleets, hundreds of warships, thousands of weapons, and one small human ship was about to fly right through all of it. "All hands to battle stations," Jinho said quietly. "Lieutenant Han, take us in." The Baekdu turned toward the battle and began to move. The warning message played again on all frequencies. Neither alien fleet paid any attention. They would soon learn that this was a terrible mistake. The Baekdu flew into the battle zone like a small bird flying into a storm. All around it, massive alien warships exchanged fire. Plasma bolts and energy beams cut through the darkness of space. Explosions lit up the void every few seconds. It was chaos. On the bridge, Lieutenant Han Minji kept her hands steady on the controls. Her eyes moved quickly, watching every thread on her screen. She turned the ship left, then right, then up, avoiding debris and weapons fire with movements that seemed almost impossible. "Velith flagship is targeting us," Lieutenant Quan Tai Wu reported from his tactical station. His voice was calm but serious. "They are charging their main plasma cannon." Captain Park Jinho did not move. He watched the screen with steady eyes. "Let them fire." Commander Lee Sora looked at him with surprise, but said nothing. She had served with Jinho for 5 years. She knew he always had a plan. The Velith flagship was enormous. It was shaped like a curved blade, with hundreds of weapon ports along its hull. Admiral Taivo stood on its bridge, watching the tiny human ship approach. He clicked his mandibles in amusement. These humans were either very brave or very stupid. Probably both. "Destroy that ship," Taivos ordered. "Show them what happens when insects challenge the Velith." The flagship's main cannon fired. A massive ball of green plasma shot across space. It moved faster than most ships could react to. It hit the Baekdu directly in the center of its hull. On the Velith flagship, the crew waited for the human ship to explode. They waited for the flash of light that always came when a ship died. They waited for debris to scatter across space, but nothing happened. The Baekdu kept moving. It did not slow down. It did not break apart. It did not even change direction. Admiral Taivos leaned forward in his seat. His compound eyes widened with confusion. "What? Report. What happened?" His tactical officer checked his screen several times before answering. "Direct hit confirmed, Admiral." "But the human ship?" "It absorbed the impact. Their hull is still intact." "Impossible," Taivo said. "That blast should have destroyed a ship 3 times that size." On the Baekdu, Quan Tai Wu checked his damage report and smiled. "Ablative armor held, Captain. Hull integrity at 99.7%. They barely scratched us." Jinho nodded. The aliens did not understand human engineering. Earth had spent centuries developing weapons. And when humans found new weapons, they also developed new defenses. The armor on the Baekdu was designed to absorb energy attacks. It could take hits that would destroy any alien ship of the same size. Open a channel to both fleets, Jinho ordered. All frequencies. Communications Officer Baek Yuna quickly made the connection. Channel open, Captain. Jinho stood up from his chair. He spoke clearly and without anger. This is Captain Park Jinho of the United Nations spaceship Baekdu. You are endangering neutral civilians. I am ordering both fleets to cease fire and withdraw from this area. This is not a request. Stand down now, or we will intervene. On the Velith flagship, Admiral Tyvos heard the message. For a moment, he felt something strange. It was almost like fear, but he pushed it away. He was a Velith admiral. He had conquered dozens of worlds. He would not be threatened by a single small ship from a weak species. All destroyers, attack formation, Tyvos commanded. Surround that human ship and tear it apart. 12 Velith destroyers broke away from the main battle. They moved quickly, forming a circle around the Baekdu. Each destroyer was twice the size of the human ship. Each one had enough weapons to destroy a small moon. Together, they were an overwhelming force, or so they thought. Lieutenant Han Minji watched the enemy ships surround them. Her heart was beating fast, but her mind was clear. She had trained for situations like this. She knew exactly what to do. Captain, requesting permission to execute evasive pattern crazy even, she said. Lee Sora's eyes went wide. Minji, that maneuver is classified as suicidal by fleet standards. Only if you do it wrong, Minji replied with a small smile. Captain Jinho looked at his young pilot. He saw no fear in her eyes, only confidence. Permission granted. Show them what a human pilot can do? Minji took a deep breath. Then her hands moved across the controls faster than anyone could follow. The Baekdu did something impossible. It spun around its own axis while accelerating at maximum speed. At the same time, it moved up, then down, then sideways, all in the space of a few seconds. The ship twisted and turned through the circle of enemy destroyers like water flowing through rocks. The Velith gunners could not track it. Their targeting computers were not fast enough. They fired wildly, and some of their shots hit their own ships instead of the Baekdu. Now, Lieutenant Quan, Jinho said quietly. Weapons free. Quan Taiwu had been waiting for this moment. His hands moved across the tactical controls. The Baekdu's weapons came alive. The first railgun round hit a Velith destroyer before its crew even knew they were being attacked. The round was a solid piece of tungsten, accelerated to incredible speed. It punched through the destroyer's shields like they were not there. It punched through the hull. It destroyed the engine core. The destroyer went dark and began to drift. 3 more destroyers died in the next 10 seconds. Each one was hit by a single perfect shot. Each one was disabled, but not destroyed. Their crews were still alive, but their ships could no longer fight. Admiral Tyvos watched in horror. 4 of his destroyers had been defeated in 11 seconds. By a single small ship. By humans, across the battle, Crystalline Prime Orath also watched. The Moran leader felt vibrations of fear spreading through his crystal body. He ordered his sensors to scan the human ship more closely. What he discovered made him wish he had never entered this battle. The human ship was not controlled by computers. It was not piloted by artificial intelligence. It was operated entirely by organic beings. Living creatures were making decisions in real time, faster than any machine the Moron had ever built. For the first time in his long life, Arth understood something important. Humans were not weak. Humans were not primitive. Humans were something the galaxy had never seen before. They were terrifying. Crystalline Prime Orth floated in silence inside his command chamber. His crystal body vibrated with fear as he read the information on his display. The Galactic Coalition kept records on every species in the known universe. The file on humans was small because they were new to space travel. But what it contained was disturbing. Humans evolved on a death world. Their planet was covered in dangerous predators, poisonous plants, and extreme weather. Most species would not survive a single day on Earth. But humans did not just survive. They became the dominant species on their entire planet. They were persistent predators. This meant they did not need to be faster or stronger than their prey. They simply followed their prey until it collapsed from exhaustion. Humans could walk and run for hours without stopping. Their bodies were designed to keep going when other creatures would give up. They had been fighting wars for over 10,000 years. They had developed thousands of different weapons and tactics. They studied war the way other species studied art or science. For humans, conflict was as natural as breathing. And there was something else. Something that made Oreth's crystal body shake with horror. Humans had chemicals in their brains that made them feel good when they took risks. They actually enjoyed danger. They found pleasure in situations that would terrify any other species. Oreth made a decision. He ordered his fleet to stop firing and pull back. The Moron would not fight the humans today. Perhaps not ever. But Admiral Tyvos was not as wise. His pride was hurt. 4 of his destroyers had been destroyed by a tiny human ship. He could not accept this shame. He would rather die than retreat. All ships, concentrate fire on the human vessel, he ordered. Launch boarding parties. I want that ship captured and its crew brought to me in chains. 3 Velith transport ships flew toward the Baikdu. Each one carried 50 Velith soldiers. These were elite warriors, trained to fight in the tight corridors of enemy ships. Their bodies were covered in natural armor. Their claws could cut through metal. They had never lost a boarding action. On the Baikdu, alarms began to ring. Commander Lee Sora checked her screens and reported quickly. Captain, 3 enemy transports approaching. They are attempting to board us. Captain Park Jinho touched a button on his chair. Sergeant Choi, you have incoming guests. Give them a proper welcome. In the lower decks of the ship, Marine Sergeant Choi Nari smiled when she heard the captain's message. She was a small woman, barely 5 feet tall, but her body was made of solid muscle. She had been a Marine for 12 years. She had fought pirates, terrorists, and hostile aliens. She was not afraid of anything. You heard the captain. She said to her squad of 20 Marines, check your weapons, watch your corners, and remember your training. The Marines moved into position. They waited in the corridors near the airlock doors. They knew the Velith would try to cut through the hull and force their way inside. They were ready. While this was happening, a fire broke out in the engine room. A piece of equipment had overheated during the battle. Smoke filled the air. Warning lights flashed everywhere. Chief Engineer Yoon Do-yoon did not panic. He grabbed a fire blanket and wrapped it around his hands. Then he ran toward the flames. The heat was intense. It burned his skin even through the blanket, but he did not stop. He smothered the fire with his body, rolling on the flames until they died. His assistant ran over to help him. Chief, your hands. You need to go to medical. Do-hyun looked at his burned hands and shrugged. The ship needs power more than I need skin. Get me the backup circuits. We have a battle to win. He continued working, ignoring the pain. This was the human way. Pain was temporary. Duty was permanent. The Velith soldiers broke through the airlock. They poured into the ship, expecting to find weak humans hiding in fear. Instead, they found Sergeant Choi Nari standing in the middle of the corridor, alone. The lead Velith warrior was confused. This tiny creature was challenging them? He was 3 times her size. His claws could cut her in half with a single swing. He rushed forward, raising his arm to strike. Nari moved faster than he could see. She stepped to the side, grabbed his arm, and used his own weight against him. He crashed into the wall, hard enough to dent the metal. Before he could recover, she pressed a shock device against his neck. Electricity surged through his body, and he fell unconscious. The other Velith attacked all at once. The corridor exploded into violence. The aliens were bigger and stronger, but the humans were faster and smarter. They worked together like a single organism. When one Marine fired, another moved. When one fell back, another advanced. They used the narrow corridors to their advantage, preventing the Velith from surrounding them. The fight lasted 4 minutes. When it was over, 17 Velith soldiers had surrendered. The rest were lying on the ground, unconscious or injured. Not a single human was killed. Sergeant Choi Nari had a cut on her forehead. Blood ran down her face. But she ignored it. She walked over to a wounded Velith warrior who was lying against the wall. His leg was injured. He could not move. The Velith expected her to kill him. That was what his people would do to a defeated enemy. He closed his eyes and waited for death. Instead, he felt something cold and wet touch his mouth. He opened his eyes and saw the small human woman holding a water bottle to his lips. "Drink," she said gently. "You fought well. There is no shame in losing to us." The Velith warrior could not understand. She had just defeated him in combat. She had every right to end his life. But instead, she was offering him water. She was treating him with kindness. Why? He managed to ask. Nari smiled softly. "Because the fight is over. You are not my enemy anymore. You are just someone who needs help." She bandaged his wounded leg with supplies from her medical kit. She made sure he was comfortable. Then she moved on to help the other wounded Velith in the command center of the Velith flagship. Admiral Tyvos received a report from the boarding party. All 50 soldiers in the first transport had been defeated. The second and third transports had been destroyed before they could even reach the human ship. Tyvos felt his confidence breaking. What kind of creatures were these humans? They fought like demons, but showed mercy like saints. They were small and soft, but impossible to defeat. Nothing about them made sense. For the first time in his life, Admiral Tyvos felt true fear. Admiral Tyvos stared at the tactical display in disbelief. His boarding parties had failed. His destroyers had been defeated. A single human ship had done more damage to his fleet than the entire Moran Armada. His pride was shattered, but his anger was growing. "All ships," he commanded, his voice shaking with rage. "Every single ship. Turn your weapons on that human vessel. I want it destroyed. I do not care about the battle with the Moran. I do not care about anything else. Destroy that ship now." 37 Velith warships stopped fighting the Moran. They turned their massive hulls toward the Baekdu. Weapons charged across the fleet. Targeting computers locked onto the small gray ship. In a few seconds, enough firepower to destroy a planet would be aimed at Captain Park Jin-ho and his crew. On the Baekdu, Lieutenant Kwon Tai-woo watched his screens fill with warning signals. "Captain, the entire Velith fleet is targeting us. I am counting over 2,000 weapon locks." Commander Lee Sora felt her heart stop for a moment. 2,000 weapons. Even with their advanced armor, the Baekdu could not survive that much firepower. They would be turned to dust in seconds, but Captain Jin-ho remained calm. His face showed no fear. He had known this moment might come. He had hoped it would not, but he was prepared. "Lieutenant Kwon," he said quietly, "it is time to show them what Baekdu means." Tai-woo nodded and entered a code into his console. Deep inside the ship, hidden weapon systems began to activate. These were weapons that humanity had kept secret from the rest of the galaxy. Weapons that were only used when there was no other choice. The Baekdu was not just a destroyer. It was one of the most powerful warships humanity had ever built. Its size was small on purpose. Humans had learned that in space combat, being a smaller target was an advantage. But small did not mean weak. Railguns extended from hidden compartments along the hull. These were not normal railguns. They could accelerate tungsten rods to 3% of the speed of light. At that speed, the rods did not need explosives. The impact alone could punch through any shield, any armor, any hull. Point defense lasers came online across the entire surface of the ship. There were over 200 of them. Each one could track and destroy incoming missiles and fighters. Together, they created a defensive sphere that was almost impossible to penetrate. And then there was the main weapon, a spinal-mounted particle lance that ran the entire length of the ship. It was designed to destroy planets. It had never been fired in combat before. The Vela fleet saw the human ship transform. They saw weapons appear that their sensors could not identify. They saw energy readings that should have been impossible for a ship that size. Fear began to spread through every ship in the fleet. Admiral Tyvos hesitated. Something was wrong. The human ship was not running. It was not even trying to dodge. It was just sitting there, waiting. And now it was covered in weapons that looked more powerful than anything the Velith had ever built. "Admiral," his tactical officer said nervously, "I am reading energy levels from that ship that do not make sense. If those readings are accurate, their main weapon could destroy our entire fleet in a single shot." Tyvos wanted to believe it was a bluff. He wanted to believe that humans were still weak and primitive. But deep in his hearts, he knew the truth. He had made a terrible mistake. On the Baekdu, Captain Jinho opened the communication channel one more time. "Admiral Tyvos, I'm going to be very clear. My ship has the power to destroy your entire fleet. Every single ship. Every single crew member. I can end this battle right now, and there is nothing you can do to stop me." He paused to let his words sink in. "But I do not want to kill your people. I do not want to leave thousands of families without their fathers and mothers and children. I want this fighting to stop. So I am going to give you a choice. You can stand down and withdraw from this area, or you can watch your fleet die. The choice is yours." Tyvos did not respond. His pride would not let him surrender to a human. He gave the order to fire. 2,000 weapons fired at once. The space around the Baekdu lit up like a sun. Energy beams, plasma bolts, missiles, and railgun rounds all flew toward the small human ship. It was enough firepower to destroy a moon. The Baekdu's point defense system activated. Lasers swept across space, destroying missiles before they could hit. The ablative armor absorbed the energy weapons. The ship shook and rattled, but it held together. And then the Baekdu fired back. Lieutenant Quan Tai Wu did not aim to kill. He aimed to disable. His targeting was perfect. Each shot calculated to hit exactly the right spot on each enemy ship. Railgun rounds punched through the engine sections of 18 warships. The ships went dark and began to drift. Their weapons went offline. Their shields collapsed. But their life support systems remained functional. The crews were still alive. The entire attack took 90 seconds. When it was over, half of the Velos fleet was disabled. Not destroyed, disabled. The crews could still breathe. They could still call for help. They could still go home to their families someday. Admiral Tyvos stood on his bridge in shock. His fleet was broken. His dreams of glory were gone. But he was still alive. The human had spared him. Why? Across the battle zone, Crystalline Prime Aurith watched everything with amazement. The moron had been observing the entire time, too afraid to fight and too curious to leave. Aurith sent a private message to the human ship. "Human Captain." He vibrated through the communication system. "What are you? We have traveled the stars for 10,000 years. We have seen many species. We have fought many wars, but we have never seen anything like you." Communications Officer Baek Yuna received the message and forwarded it to Captain Jinho. She was smiling. There was pride in her eyes. Jinho thought about the question for a moment. Then he responded. "We are human," he said simply. "We protect those who cannot protect themselves. We fight only when we must, and we show mercy whenever we can. That is who we are." Orath did not fully understand, but he knew one thing for certain. The galaxy had changed today. The humans were no longer a young species to be ignored. They were something new, something powerful, something that could not be predicted. And that was the most frightening thing of all. The guns fell silent. The Battle of Kasari Nebula was over, but not in the way anyone had expected. There was no victor. There was no surrender. There was only a ceasefire, created by a single human warship that neither fleet could defeat. The Neth refugee transport was safe. 3,000 innocent civilians who had been moments from death were now being escorted out of the combat zone by the Baekdu. Children looked out of the transport's windows at the gray human ship flying beside them. Their parents told them stories about the strange creatures from Earth who had saved their lives. Captain Park Jinho stood on the bridge and watched the transport fly towards safety. He felt tired but satisfied. This was why he had joined the fleet. Not for glory or adventure, but for moments like this. Moments when he could make a difference. Commander Lee Sora walked up beside him. "The transport will reach neutral space in 4 hours. The Neth government is sending ships to meet them." Jinho nodded. "Good. What about our wounded?" "Dr. Shin is treating everyone now. We have 17 injured crew members, but no deaths. Chief Engineer Yoon's hands are badly burned, but he refuses to leave the engine room." Sora smiled slightly. "He says he will sleep when we get back to Earth." That sounded like Do-Yun. The man was as stubborn as the ship itself. Jinho made a mental note to personally order him to rest once the current situation was handled. For the next 3 days, the Baekdu remained in the Kasari system. Captain Jinho could have left. His mission was complete. The refugees were safe. But he chose to stay. Dr. Shin Yoonji worked without rest. She was a small woman with gentle hands and a warm smile. She set up a medical station on the ship and opened it to anyone who needed help. Velith soldiers with broken limbs came aboard the human ship for treatment. Moron with cracked crystals floated into the medical bay. Even crews from the disabled warships sent their wounded to the BAEKDU.EUNG, treated them all the same. She did not ask which side they had fought on. She did not care about their species or their politics. She only cared about healing them. One young Velith soldier asked her why she was helping enemies. Yoonji looked at him with kind eyes and said, "You are not my enemy. You are my patient. When you are in my medical bay, the war does not exist. Only your health matters." The young soldier did not understand, but he felt grateful. He would remember her kindness for the rest of his life. On the 4th day, Admiral Tyvos requested a meeting with Captain Jinho. He had spent 3 days thinking about everything that had happened. He had watched the humans help his wounded soldiers. He had seen their doctor treating Velith warriors with the same care she gave to her own crew. Nothing made sense anymore. The two leaders met in the conference room of the Baekdu. Tyvos had to bend down to fit through the human-sized doors. He felt uncomfortable in the small space. But he had come for a reason. He stood before Captain Jinho, towering over the human by more than a meter. His black shell gleamed under the lights. His compound eyes studied the human's face. "I do not understand you," Tyvos said finally. "You had the power to destroy my fleet. You could have killed thousands of my warriors. But you did not. Why?" Jinho looked up at the massive alien without fear. Because destruction was not necessary. Only protection was. Protection. Tyvos repeated the word slowly. You risked your ship and your crew to save refugees from a species you have never met. You showed mercy to soldiers who tried to kill you. You treated our wounded as if they were your own people. What do you gain from this? Jinho was quiet for a moment. He thought about Earth. He thought about human history. He thought about all the wars and suffering and hatred that had shaped his species over thousands of years. And he thought about how humans had finally learned, after all that pain, what truly mattered. We gain nothing, he said honestly. That is not why we do it. We help others because it is right. We show mercy because we remember what it was like to receive none. We protect the weak because we were once weak ourselves. Someday, we may need help too. And we hope that others will remember how we treated them. Admiral Tyvos was silent for a long time. In his culture, power meant domination. Strength meant conquest. Mercy was weakness. But this human had shown him something different. This human had proven that the greatest strength was not the ability to destroy. It was the choice not to. Slowly, the massive Velith Admiral lowered his head. He crossed all four of his arms across his chest. This was the highest gesture of respect in Velith culture. It had not been given to an enemy in over 1,000 years. Human Captain Park Jinho, Tyvos said formally, I was wrong about your species. You are not weak. You are not primitive. You are something the galaxy has never seen. And I believe we have much to learn from you. Jinho felt surprised but did not show it. He simply nodded in acceptance. Perhaps we can learn from each other, Admiral. 6 months later, the war between the Velith and the Moron came to an end. The peace treaty was signed in a space station orbiting a neutral world. Diplomats from both species attended the ceremony. And at the center of the room, in a place of honor, stood Captain Park Jinho and the crew of the Baekdu. The treaty contained a simple statement that both species had agreed upon. It would be remembered for centuries. The humans taught us that strength is not measured in destruction, but in restraint. They showed us that mercy is not weakness, but wisdom. And they proved that the true mark of a great species is not how they treat their friends, but how they treat those who were once their enemies. The Baekdu finally returned to Earth 2 months after the peace treaty. The crew received medals and honors. Captain Jinho was offered a promotion to Admiral. He turned it down. He said he preferred to stay on his ship across the galaxy. The automated warning message was updated in every navigation system. Ships from 1,000 worlds now saw it whenever a human vessel entered an area of conflict. Caution! A human warship has entered the combat zone. Once, it had been a warning of danger. A sign that a strange and unknown species was approaching. Now, it meant something different. It was a promise that help was coming. A sign that the fighting would soon end. A reminder that somewhere in the cold darkness of space, there were creatures who would risk everything to protect the innocent. It was no longer a warning. It was a message of hope. And across the galaxy, species that had once ignored humans began to tell stories about them. Stories about small, soft creatures who fought like demons but healed like angels. Stories about warriors who could destroy fleets but chose mercy instead. Stories about a ship called Baekdu and a captain named Park Jinho who taught the universe what true strength really meant. The humans had arrived, and the galaxy would never be the same.